Welcome to Tech Smarter. My name is Abby Ritchie, and I am the tech guru at the Smarter Service. And you can find me every week right here talking with people who are engaged in age tech innovation. It's an exciting place to be. There's constantly new things happening. And I want to thank our sponsors today, Leading Age Arizona, for sponsoring Tech Smarter, and to the Smarter Service for producing this episode. And if you happen to be a senior living operator or a caregiver and you're frustrated with managing your residents' tech needs, and we know residents have questions and they have questions, and it's something that we at the Smarter Service have professionalized, and we would love to help you with that. Go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn and we will get that going for you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to bring my guests on. Today we have Sanjeev Shetty. Sanjeev and I have been colleagues for several years now, and he is the CEO and co-founder at HelloGard. Welcome to Tech Smarter, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Abby. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always a great experience to see you both here in the studio as well as at conferences because we go way back. And for anyone who's not familiar with your trajectory, will you please share with them how you landed in senior living and where you um, got into using robotics and what you're doing today, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent most of my career in the telecom industry, and then after 20 years, I decided I wanted to do something totally different. And I landed a role as part of an innovation lab at a provider. And that took me down the path of robotics as I was looking at various technologies. And I spent 2 years at a tech engagement company where I kind of looked at robotics even more. And my passion for robotics led me to really start my own company in 2022. And that's how HelloGard was formed. So that's sort of my path into the robotics area.
Yeah, I would love to know, is there some experience that comes to mind where you were deploying a robotic or you heard a story and then you were like exactly like, yes, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, there's quite a few, Abby. I'll give you one example. And we look at wins with our customers in a slightly different light. So we don't necessarily have to make a sale to view it as a win. We typically go in and we try to solve a tough challenge that a community or a customer is facing from a workforce standpoint. And that usually manifests itself in various ways within a community. The one that comes to mind most recently is we were talking to a community that's having a really tough time with mail delivery. As you know, with Amazon packages and FedEx and a lot of other packages, the front desk staff that's manning the reception desk is having a really tough time doing their job and also delivering mail. So this community came to us and said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had a robot that could carry all these different packets of mail and deliver it to the customer throughout the day, as opposed to having the front desk person spend 5 hours doing it." And that's exactly what we did. And that's one of those moments where we realized why we're doing what we're doing. We're solving problems when it comes to labor challenges.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because as the statistics come out and we hear over and over how many jobs are still vacant and how much turnover there is in the marketplace. There are certain repetitive tasks like delivering mail that a robot is equipped to do. And while the front office or the front desk can really focus on being present and available. And so I just think that is a marvelous use of robotics. What else have you found in working with senior living communities has been an excellent use of robotics?
Yeah, so the most common ones, and most people usually start out with this is the dining use case, right? So things like busing and serving tables, that's the most common one. But as we move on from there, the ones that we are finding that we run into the most is floor care, as well as package delivery. On the healthcare side, it may take a different form in terms of helping nurses, with things like shift handoffs or note taking or taking vitals, for example. So it really depends, but those are the most common ones we run into where there's a real need, and that's where we come in.
Have you experienced any um, infrastructure challenges like Wi-Fi dead zones or elevator integration? I personally, like, I've taken Waymo several times, and there are certain areas in which Waymo is unable to gauge the activity or the reality of what's happening. How has that been impacting your infrastructure, your deployment of robotics?
Yeah, we were seeing that when we first started out, Wi-Fi being an issue, but now with alternatives like LTE, cellular, and most recently Starlink, we're finding that there's always workarounds for Wi-Fi challenges, and we usually try to use those alternatives when there is a Wi-Fi challenge.
Got it. Got it. You mentioned earlier the caregiver and the staff shortages, and we know that senior care is facing that for sure. How does shifting routine tasks to automated operations directly impact staff retention?
So what we try and do is let me back up. So staff turnover right now in senior living is at an all-time high. It's at 40%. So what that means is that if you have a community of 100 staff, for example, 40% of them are rotating every year. And in terms of dollar amount, we know what that costs because the average cost of a turnover is somewhere around $3,000 to $4,000. So the math adds up really quickly. So what we try and do is provide some relief to the staff so they're not doing mundane, repetitive tasks. And we take those tasks away and have our robotic solutions do that for the community. And that way, the employees are happier. They do more uh, meaningful work. They spend more time with the residents, and everyone's happier at the end of the day. And we've seen a direct correlation between our solutions and a reduction in staff turnover.
What is their typical reaction when a robot is introduced?
Yeah, so Abby, just with any other major technological shift or change, there's always some initial skepticism and criticism. If you go back to the days of the smartphone or even a process change as simple as, self-serving kiosks at grocery shops, right? There was always some resistance like, hey, what is this? Do I have to use it? What's the cost of this? And I think over time, as people use it and it becomes more mainstream and people start to see the benefits, I think people get used to it, especially when it positively impacts their work environment. I think that's when people really start to see the benefits and take a liking for it.
Yeah, I think, it's reminding me of back in the day when I remember I worked at a TV station in San Francisco, and we were just beginning to talk about why we needed a website, for instance, and why we need email, for instance. And so it's just a matter of like educating people and letting them know that like this is happening and how much it's going to help offset everything else that you're experiencing. And so as an as a founder in this industry, and do you find a lot of challenges, like you're constantly battling this uphill resistance to innovation?
I think some of it boils down to the leadership that you're dealing with. Some people are more apt to innovation and change. I think there needs to be a culture change. And at the speed at which AI is progressing forward, I think it's very hard to deny the fact that AI, in whatever sense, whether it's physical, robotics, or whether it's agentic, it's going to change every workforce and workplace environment as we know it. And it's the ones who adapt and change with it are the ones who will survive the AI race. So uh, that's my personal opinion, obviously, but I do think that there has to be a mindset shift in terms of adoption.
And where do you find the biggest mindset shift occurring? Do you find it like when you're at conferences? Do you find it just by piloting a robot in a community? Where do you see the biggest breakthrough occurring?
I think when people see it, some people have to see it to believe it. We've sort of moved on from pilots because a lot of our robots are mainstream now. They're working, they're showing results, they're showing ROI. So I think we've moved on from pilots to the point where people are actually seeing results, and that's a major shift I think for people, where people are able to see it in other working environments. Um, so we do very few pilots going forward, unless there's a compelling need for it and it's something new that's never been done before.
I'm wondering what that something new that's never been done before is, and if you want to share that at some point, that would be great. Because I know that you're on the forefront of innovation in this way. But like, I'm curious, in when you sit down with senior living CEOs and CFOs and who are hesitant to invest in automation, what are the key metrics and proof points that you present?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Abby. I think, to just give you some context, um, most of the AI projects, even though there's adoption, they fail. And then the reason they fail is because senior leadership hasn't, taken ownership or sponsorship of these projects. Only 6%, unfortunately, of AI projects actually show ROI and savings. I think on the physical side, it's a lot easier to have that conversation because with physical AI or robotics, you're doing manual labor, right, as opposed to something behind the scenes that you don't actually see with the naked eye. So it's easier to quantify it, and the best proof points are usually where I bring up actual data. And this is part of the reason why we built HelloGard Intelligence, is to be able to take that real-time telemetry data and show a senior leader that these robots actually do the work. There is an audit trail. They're actually able to see the data. If you take an example of cleaning, for instance, you can see how many square feet a robot has cleaned or how many deliveries have been made, and so on and so forth. And that translates to real ROI. So it becomes abundantly clear when you have the data that the investment is worthwhile. And that's how I think typically we have those conversations, is through data.
Yeah, it is powerful. And with your flexible leasing model, how has that been a turning point for a lot of senior living operators?
I think, Abby, it really boils down to an OPEX versus CAPEX decision. A lot of senior living leaders like the robotics-as-a-service model because it's a fixed fee every month, and every couple of years they get a new working robot. And at the pace at which robotics and AI is moving, it's nice to be able to get something new every 3 years and not have to worry about it. Um, and obviously, if there's communities that like the CapEx model, we will certainly be flexible and allow that for that as well. But it just depends on the particular community and what their appetite is for how to finance these. I mean, we offer very flexible models either way.
And I'm curious, in your experience, what have been some features that have really taken off? And what are some features that you were really excited about that didn't take off? And this is purely as we're speaking to other innovators.
Yeah, I think the ones that have really taken off are the ones that are able to show immediate ROI. For example, floor care, that has really taken off. And then there are yet others where, especially on the clinical side, that haven't taken off because there's obviously integrations or interoperability issues that you're dealing with. And there's always skepticism, and there's regulations such as HIPAA that cause some amount of angst when it comes to introducing a robotic solution in a healthcare setting. So I would say the ones on the operational side have taken off more than the healthcare side.
And for you, just as an innovator, which features have you been really excited about?
I'm really excited about what the future holds for robotics as we go into sort of the humanoid race. There's a lot of chatter and excitement and entertainment around humanoids and what they can do for seniors. I still think that the humanoid technology is very nascent and has a long way to go in terms of learning to do different things and interacting with seniors. But that one area of robotics is very exciting to me as we look forward in the next 2 to 3 years.
And where do you tend to get your inspiration from?
I tend to get my inspiration from other innovators as well as talking to customers and communities. I always find it really interesting to see what new labor challenges exist, what challenges are out there that haven't been solved yet that we can solve with our solutions. And if there isn't a solution, we will either build it or we can try and find a solution. So that's exciting to me, is to find areas that haven't been addressed.
Absolutely. And if you're talking right now to a senior living executive who is hesitant but wants to start exploring robotics, where would you suggest they begin?
I think the best place to start is to do your own homework and research. And we take at HelloGard a more consultative approach to providing solutions. So rather than just dump a robot, we may come in and start with, where do your problems lie when it comes to labor challenges? And sometimes robots may not be part of the solution at all. And sometimes we may not be a good fit. So we're not a one size fits all. We come in with a problem solving approach and then apply robotics and AI to that problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, and when you're looking at different tech trends right now in healthcare and aging services, what do you think is one that's highly overhyped and one that's being ignored?
I think going back to the humanoids, I think they're overhyped right now because all you see is humanoids everywhere dancing and doing somersaults and kung fu moves. But beyond that, the real use cases haven't been defined yet. So I think that uh, that is a little overhyped right now. I think the more boring robots are being ignored, um, and I think that's where there's a lot of traction.
When you say boring robots, what are you referring to?
I think the kind of robots that do a particular task, whether it's cleaning or delivery or security and things of that nature. Um, those are the ones that I think are being completely missed when it comes to social media.
So do you think that there should be more focus on those and like more videos around that and more attraction and just a more in-depth look at it?
I think because of the use cases that they're solving, I think sometimes people tend to miss the boring ones and focus on sort of the new shiny object, and the new shiny object is not quite ready yet. So I just feel like rather than look at something that's 2 or 3 years out, I think there needs to be more focus on the ones that actually work and actually do something concrete. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's something I've noticed as well, just in working with older adults, is that they're quite delighted and engaged with the robotics, as opposed to like people would think like that they're going to be scared of them. They tend to be rather engaged with them and excited about them. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more, especially as the newer generation starts entering senior living in the next decade. I think That's a generation. I'm talking about Gen X that has grown up with technology, right? Whether it's the PC or the smartphone. So I think they're more receptive to robotics, and I think they'll be more receptive to AI as well. So that's going to be the big shift, I think, in the next decade, as you see folks in the Gen X community kind of moving into senior living.
Excellent. Well, Sanjeev, I want to thank you for joining us today. And how can people get in touch with you?
I think the easiest way is just reach out to our sales email, sales@hellogard.com.
Okay, wonderful. And for those of you joining us in the chat, thank you so much for your participation. We absolutely love it. And we will see you right back here next week for another episode of Tech Smarter. Thank you.
Thank you.